Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everybody, William Harris here. I am the founder and CEO of Element and the host of this podcast where I feature experts in the D2C industry, sharing strategies on how to scale your business and achieve your goals. I'm excited about the guest that I have today is Nathan Hirsch. Nathan is a lifelong entrepreneur and focuses on the unsexy or boring parts of entrepreneurship, bookkeeping, and hiring. He is currently the CEO of EcomBalance and AccountsBalance, an outsource school. Nathan is best known for co-founding freeup.net in 2015 with an initial $5,000 investment, scaling it to $12 million in yearly revenue, and having it acquired in 2019. Today, he leads EcomBalance and AccountsBalance, an online monthly bookkeeping service for e-commerce and digital businesses, and Outsource School, a membership teaching business owners how to hire effectively online. Nathan has appeared in 700 plus podcasts, and you can follow him on LinkedIn. That said, Nathan, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, Will, thanks for having me. I'm excited to finally be here. I know we booked it out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say we first met, maybe was it in Sujan Patel's Slack group, or was it Benji Himes? One of those two Slack groups, I feel like, is the first time that we ended up connecting years ago.
Yeah, that sounds right. I was trying to think of it as well. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, so we've been going back and forth, sharing each other's content, working with each other on different things for almost close to a decade, I feel like now. And it's exciting to actually kind of be here together with you on a podcast. I want to dig into just like your founder story and what led to that, and this how we can help e-commerce businesses do a better job with their accounts and bookkeeping. I feel like that's something that doesn't get discussed enough. But before we dig into that, I do want to at least announce our quick sponsorship message. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million. And we were ranked as the 12th fastest growing agency in the world by Adweek. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is ELUMYNT.com. That said, Nathan, what got you to the point where you said, I feel like I need to go into the world of accounting and bookkeeping for e-commerce companies? What was the story or the inspiration there?
Yeah, good question. So we sold FreeUp in November 2019, and the original plan was to take a year off, travel the world. I didn't think I would see my business partner for the next year. Sure. And then COVID hit shortly after. So we were kind of in a weird spot. We had sold the company. We were completely out of the business before COVID hit. And we didn't really have any new business ideas. And we were stuck inside when you can only watch so much Netflix. So yeah, a buddy of mine reached out and said, hey, if you started a course on hiring, I think a lot of entrepreneurs would get a lot out of it. And we ended up launching the MVP of Outsource School, and people really liked that. So we kind of expanded upon it and added our SOPs and turned it into a membership and a nice little passive income stream to us that helps other entrepreneurs. And meanwhile, we're constantly just brainstorming ideas, a lot of bad ideas on how to start a business outside of the VA freelancer space. I mean, we had a non-compete with FreeUp. Even if we didn't, we had already done that, been there. And Outsource School was a nice little way to kind of stay in the space, but we weren't going to build any kind of freelancer VA other business. So at brainstorming different ideas, we always kind of came back to, what do we like in a business? We like boring businesses, like hiring. We like businesses that are sticky and have recurring revenue and help other entrepreneurs. And we want to stay in the e-commerce space. And we like businesses that go about with the experience that we've had. And one of the best business decisions that we ever made was hiring a bookkeeper from day one of FreeUp. We had learned a lot from our Amazon business on how not to do bookkeeping. I tried doing it myself. I tried hiring college kids to do it. I tried dumping it on my CPA at the end of the year, doing it once a quarter, and then finally realized you need to do it every single month and look at the numbers and make decisions based on what the numbers are telling you. So with FreeUp, hired a bookkeeper from day one before we'd even proved the idea, before we had a lot of clients. And when we went to sell the business, we had 4 years of immaculate books that helped us pass due diligence. But the real benefit was we made great decisions every single month based on what the numbers were telling us. And that helped us grow and make a lot of money even if we didn't sell it. So that kind of gave us the idea for bookkeeping, a bookkeeping service. And we did a lot of market research. We interviewed over 100 e-commerce sellers. You can find those interviews on our blog. We published them, and we looked at competitors. We looked at other people in the space, and on paper, a lot of bookkeeping companies are run by bookkeepers who are not so great at hiring and scaling and growing and marketing and SEO and all the stuff that kind of goes around bookkeeping. And on paper, that's what we're good at. Obviously, we needed to execute it. So that's kind of how the idea came about. And we ended up hiring a controller here in Denver, built a bookkeeping team around her, gave 2 free months to anyone that would take it to help us break stuff and give us feedback. And that's how EcomBalance was born.
I love it. Well, and what's interesting is a lot of people maybe don't realize just how much of a difference there is in bookkeeping for e-commerce. Similar to kind of what you even mentioned about the idea of, trying to find other bookkeepers or trying to train a college student or something along those lines. Somebody that I really look up to a lot is Justin Koffenberg, a friend of mine. He started a company called Sports Engine, sold that to NBC. And did really well. But I remember talking to him one time, and he said, the best decision that I could do as an entrepreneur is, as fast as I can, get somebody that knows finance into the business and let them take that off of your plate so you can focus on the part of the business that you know the most. And I like finance. I'll say that, like, when it comes to math, I love finance. I actually enjoy digging into it, but it's a distraction for me as the CEO of the business to focus too much of my time and energy there, as opposed to focusing on the vision and where are we going and how are we doing it. And so,
yeah, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I completely agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. You should know the numbers of your business and you should review income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. But a lot of entrepreneurs have the wrong mentality when it comes to bookkeeping. I mean, early on in your business, if you're an e-commerce seller, your time's so valuable. Any time that you spend inside the books, taking a course on QuickBooks, reconciling accounts,
right,
that's a terrible use of your time. And 9 out of 10 times, you're just going to do it wrong anyway. So not only are you going to waste time, but you're just going to have to pay someone to redo it. And cleanup work always costs more than catch-up work. And the real way to think about it is, you're not going to go out of business because of your bookkeeping expense, especially if you're small and you're a newer business. We're talking hundreds of dollars a month, and I'm sure there's services out there cheaper than me, but you will go out of business if you're spending money on the wrong things, if you're making bad decisions, if you don't know your numbers, if you run out of cash. Those are the things that will actually hurt you. And I think a lot of people have it backwards. Or like, oh, the first year I'll do my books and that'll save me time and money, and then I'll build up and I'll hire a bookkeeper. When really, in my mind, it's just a necessary business expense. If you're starting a business, you got to factor in a bookkeeper into that business model and hire them from day one.
Well, and especially if you're starting a company and you're thinking at some point in time you may want to exit, to your point, having all of the bookkeeping done correctly from the very beginning makes it a lot easier when you go through due diligence. When you're talking, from an M&A perspective, they like to be able to see that you understand what you're doing and that they can make sense and heads and tails about what was going on within the business, and that there's a good, story to be told here. There's a trajectory that makes sense and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And due diligence was the most stressful 6 months of my life. And that's with clean, immaculate books. I can't even imagine going through it without clean books. And I've seen people who come to the end and they'll come to us and say, hey, I'm trying to sell my business, but I need bookkeeping for the past 3 years. I need you to do it in the next 2 weeks so I can close this deal. And I'm like, sorry, man, like there's no way we're doing 3 weeks of books in 2 years, or 3 years of books in 2 weeks. And I mean, stuff like that takes time. So don't wait until you're going to get to a sale or you want to sell. Like, the time to clean up your books is now. And sure, it might cost you a few grand if you're going back a bit, and it might take a little time and a little hassle, but in 6 months and a year, you're going to be really happy that you not only have clean books and it's one less thing off your plate, but that you're getting new books every single month that are accurate, that you can make decisions on. So the time to get cut up and get on a good process is now.
And so what are some of the mistakes that you see people doing, especially when it comes to e-commerce, when they're trying to run their books themselves, that you end up finding yourselves having to clean up or fix or undo and redo? What are those biggest mistakes that you're running into?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of bookkeepers that don't understand e-commerce, they'll take the net that's deposited into the bank account, and that'll be the top line of their income statement, which is obviously not correct. Like you've got
Sure.
Amazon sales, Walmart sales, eBay sales, whatever it is, different fees, refunds, returns, all that stuff that goes in there. And then you've got the net that's deposited in your bank account. So that's one of the fastest ways to see if your books are incorrect or if your bookkeeper understands e-commerce. And that's something that a normal e-commerce bookkeeper is going to know how to do. And they're going to use some kind of connecting tools, like trying to go from Amazon to Walmart, Amazon to QuickBooks or Walmart to QuickBooks. Usually doesn't work very well. You need an A2X, a Connect Books, a Link My Books, something in between to really make sure that you're getting all the fees and stuff in there. And the other big mistake is just not segmenting. I mean, if you're selling on different marketplaces, if you're selling on different products, you want to know how each one is doing. There are sellers out there selling 5 different products and 3 of them are unprofitable and they have no idea because it's all lumped together and they have no idea what's going on. So make sure you work with a bookkeeper that segments your books so you know what's going on a per brand, per product, per marketplace basis.
Yeah, that's huge. And are there specific things that you would say when you're digging into, let's just say, marketplaces versus other segmentations, certain segmentations that typically matter more to a business? You talk about product and categories or things like that. Ones that you feel like make a bigger difference?
Say that again. Product that makes a bigger difference?
Well, like if you're talking to which one makes a bigger difference? If they're going to start segmenting now, like product, segment at the product level, segment at category level, segment at the channel level. If you're that can get very, very tedious as well. Which segments are the better ones to start with?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a smaller business, you can just start off with marketplace and then go like per SKU. It just like you want to start the segment early and you can always segment more, but at least don't have it all clumped together. And that's an issue that you have a lot of times when CPAs do the books because they're doing the books in a way to file taxes. They're not necessarily doing books in a way that to help you make decisions. So it might all be 100% accurate from a tax standpoint, but it's not going to help you make decisions on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah. And so what other decisions could you learn from segmenting things differently? What are ways that you can use the information from doing books correctly to help accelerate your growth?
Yeah, I mean, to me, accurate books so to me, the way that I've always learned bookkeeping is you want to compare this month to last month and this month to the same month last year. And then you want to look at trends. And you're going through all 3 reports and you have a finance meeting that's on your calendar every single month. So you get the books by the 10th, by the 15th each month, whatever it is. You have a meeting on your calendar that you don't miss for any reason. And if anyone wants my meeting, go to ecombalance.com/agenda and you can grab it. It's the same meeting I've been running for 6+ years with my business partner. But you're comparing, hey, has payroll gone up? Has payroll gone down? Are margins going up? Margins going down? What about our PPC costs? Can I hire an agency? Do I need to cut back on payroll? Do I have a budget to launch another product? How's my cash flow? Am I going to run out of cash with the summer coming up and a slow season? So these are things that you have to be doing on a month-to-month basis, and you're going to get better at it. You're going to, over time, you're going to get to know your numbers better and better, and that's going to help you make better decisions. And it's going to allow you to ask questions. If you don't understand a line item, you can send it to your bookkeeper, your CPA, and really understand what's going on and where the numbers are coming from.
So here's an interesting hot take. Do you have a preference on where you're thinking or how you're thinking about ad spend? We do advertising, right? So that's like, this is one that we're a little bit more passionate about where that ends up on like the books. But how are you looking at ad spend and evaluating that as far as, let's say you've got a business that is struggling a little bit and they come to you and they say, hey, there's this really big line item for advertising cost. You're looking at it as a straight cost, or are you looking at this as a way to help them grow, from a bookkeeping perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the real answer is A, I'm not a bookkeeper, and B, like we don't give people like advice of, hey, this cost is too high. Like our goal is to deliver accurate numbers, and what you're talking about is more of like that CFO role. If you think of accounting in a big bubble, you've got your CPA, tax strategy, LLC formation, filing your taxes. You got your bookkeeper to give you accurate numbers each month and segmenting correctly and make sure all fees are accounted for. And then you got the CFO, fractional outsource, full-time, whatever it is. And they're there to take the numbers and make business decisions with the numbers and project cash and project sales. So, I mean, what you're talking about is more on a business decision basis. And I mean, it can go so many different ways. You could have a great agency, a bad agency. It could be something that's just getting started. It could be something that's been wasting money for years. Like there's so many different ways to look at it, but it's not like someone's getting a report from us that's saying, hey, you're spending too much on ads, cut back. That's not the role of the bookkeeper.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't know if you had done enough of this to where you say like, oh, I've got my own hot take opinion on it. I'll give you my hot take opinion on it.
Please, do it up.
When we look at this, a lot of times what we saw, and especially this happened during, would have been 2021, all the iOS 14 stuff happened. And so people's reporting that they were getting on their return from their ad spend in platform had changed in a significant way. And we noticed there was a big trend of a lot of people coming to us saying, well, we had a return on ad spend or an MER that was 5X. We told the agency that we actually need to be at a 7X in order for us to be profitable, right? And this was coming oftentimes from the finance team or somebody working with the marketing team saying, no, we're not profitable. You guys need to be more profitable on the ad spend. And so what would happen is agencies would pull back on that ad spend to make that happen. And so they would maybe they'd end up pulling back on prospecting or something along that, maybe leaning more towards retargeting because it has a higher reported return on ad spend. You couldn't see my air quotes. I got to make sure I get that in frame there. Reported, right? And so what would happen, what we saw is they would go, the next month, they would go to the point where they were actually losing more money when it came to profitability. They had a higher reported return on ad spend, but when you look at the actual EBITDA, it was lower because they weren't even covering now basically their overhead because they're spending so much less money. And then they say, okay, well, we didn't make money again this time. So the finance team's getting with the marketing team saying, guys, you still aren't profitable. We need to figure something out here. And so the marketing team says, okay, well, let's go to a 9X. That'll solve our problems. And then they get to a 9X. But again, they scaled back on the ad spend so much to the point where they're still not covering their overhead. And it wouldn't matter what they did. And so what we saw is oftentimes maybe a lack of communication between the finance team and the marketing team getting on the same page about what that ad spend means. And just because it's a big line item does not mean that it should be considered a cost in the same way that a lot of other costs are, because it's a cost that should be leading towards increased revenue. So it's a very different kind of approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What are you seeing? Just curious while I have you here for like Amazon ad spend. Like, what are you seeing? Obviously, it's getting more competitive. Any just overall thoughts on where that's going and what you're seeing?
It's definitely getting more competitive. And so there's a difference, I think, between the way that we look at D2C versus Amazon. On the D2C side, when you acquire a purchase, you acquired that customer typically as well. And so you have that LTV that you can build up on. That's not true on Amazon. And so I would say that I put a higher emphasis on profitability per purchase on Amazon than I would on D2C, where I might be willing to say to somebody on the D2C side, maybe you acquire somebody and knowing that you're not going to be profitable on that purchase from a CAC perspective until 3 months from now. That's not true on Amazon. But a lot of people are getting more aggressive on Amazon. Part of that is Amazon has made it to the point where you almost can't search for anything within reason where the entire above the fold is all ads. And so there is competition there that you need to pay to play, and you've got to be there. I think as far as where that's going to go, I think that's just going to be considered to be a part of what is necessary on Amazon. And you're going to have to know your numbers, and you're going to have to do a better job with that. There's an app that I like, Chad Rubin. I actually just had him on the show a couple weeks ago, I think now. And what they do is they're actually optimizing pricing. So if you actually, these are your products and you can change the prices for them, increasing pricing to find a better profitability margin for you. So you might be able to spend a little bit more on the ad side of things if you raise your prices. Now you can still make profit. Otherwise, you add in your seller fee, your FBA fee, and your ad spend. And a lot of people don't realize that on a lot of products, they're actually losing money.
Yeah, Chad's always up to cool stuff. I'm excited to see where this new company goes.
Yeah, and if I didn't call that out, the company's called Prophecy. It's a really, really interesting company. And if you're on Amazon and you're trying to figure out how to be more profitable there, I highly recommend it. So from your experience, what financials are the most important to know and follow as a business owner? So we talked obviously a little bit about profitability and stuff, and we talked about segmenting things, but what are the ones that you like to look at the most?
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 reports that you just have to know as an entrepreneur. And this is going to help you with your own business. It's going to help you if you invest in business. If you're like me and you have a lot of money in the stock market, you got to know how to read these reports. So income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. And obviously income statement shows you how much you're making and losing. Balance sheet shows you how healthy your business is, assets compared to debt, and then your cash flow, especially in e-commerce, where I kind of mentioned that a lot of e-commerce businesses go out of business not because they're unprofitable, but because they just run out of cash. Especially if you're buying inventory in different segments, every business is a little different there. So just being on top of those 3 monthly reports, and my kind of message is like, don't take a course on QuickBooks. Don't learn how to use QuickBooks. You don't even have to log into QuickBooks, but make sure that you are reading income statement, balance sheet, cash flow every single month for your business and comparing those trends this month compared to last month and this month compared to the same month last year.
And that's where that fractional CFO or somebody could come in and help help people make better decisions around those numbers. That said, knowing that is not you, you're not a fractional CFO, are there certain red flags that you, at least in your experience, look at and you say, oh, these are things to be watching out, especially if you're an e-commerce business? And maybe, on the cash flow side of things, and you talked about inventory, maybe it does come down to the way inventory is handled and from a tax perspective at the end of the year or something like that. I don't know. I'm throwing things out there, but are there ones that you look at as red flags to be aware of?
It's funny. I feel like we kind of live in the e-commerce vanity number world where people just throw out like, oh, I'm a 7-figure, I'm an 8-figure seller. So,
sure.
I mean, a lot of these times you go right to the profit. Like, how much are these companies actually making? And getting good terms is incredibly important. I've seen people that are selling on Walmart or even in retail stores, Home Depot, whatever, but they're not getting paid for 90, 120 days, whatever it is.
Right.
And they have no real plan to make sure that their business is cash flow positive. You get companies like 8Fig and all that's coming up for that reason. So that's what I kind of look at is profitability and cash flow. And then you kind of go right to the margins. Like, are your margins going up over time or down over time? And if they're going down, what's the actual plan to turn that around? And then looking on like a payroll side, like there are a lot of people that they get in this habit of hiring and then they got to give raises and they got to give bonuses and then they go on another marketplace. So they got to hire another person and their payroll and contractor and freelance and VA costs are just creeping up over time without them realizing that their business can't really support that kind of growth.
Yeah. You talked about margins growing or declining over time. One of the things that we've noticed that we've seen with a couple of clients, one particular client launched a new. They were high end particular niche and whatever they were. I want to say AOV maybe $1,200. I'm making that up, but it's a little over $1,000. And they launched a new line of products that was meant to be like their low end stuff. And so it was maybe $400 AOV. And what happened was, as you can imagine, just by having those ads there, just by having that be the hero image on their website, there was a significant amount of purchases that went to those products when they launched this. Now, the downside to that was, let's say profit margin percentage wise, they were within the same realm of what they're normally running at. But when you looked at this from a dollar amount, it was a big difference in dollar amount of profitability here per purchase. And so they were making slightly more top line revenue year over year, but their profitability was down year over year. And so this was one of those things where we had to help. And because we dig into the P&Ls of all of our clients that we're working with, I shouldn't say all of them, maybe about 40% of them, whoever's willing to, we were able to say, as a result of this, we need to increase the amount of ad spending that's going towards some of these other products, maybe reduce the amount of ad spend that's going towards the cheaper products. So that way we can make sure that we maintain that profitability for you. And so profit optimization on the SKU level is something that we like to do with a lot of clients. And people don't realize that you can get very, very granular on this, even down to how we optimize the feed within Google Ads platform or Google Shopping, things like that. So that way you're optimizing the profitability. You may not actually increase your top line revenue, but you can increase that bottom line. And I think that's a bigger deal for most businesses than they realize.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I mean, that's why you kind of need someone who can actually dig into the finances and be like, what does this mean? Like, okay. Right. And I also try to avoid, like, there are people that are like, you need to be having these margins, or these are the KPIs you shoot for, or like stuff that's just very generic. And it really is on a business by business basis. And there's just exceptions to every rule. Like something that's good for your business might be bad for something else. There's strategy involved. There's things that could be okay on a short-term basis that leads to something good long-term. And there's other things that could be a bad trend that you need to fix right away. So it's really tough to kind of talk in generalities when it comes to finances.
And so let's say that somebody, they're working with you, or maybe they're not, but whatever, they've got their books cleaned up and they feel really good about where their books are at now as an e-commerce store. They've got the right data flowing in and they can make these decisions. But they're lost on what to do with the data now. Are there places that you know of that circling, swimming in this pond could recommend that you're like, hey, go here, you can maybe find a good CFO, or look for people with these kind of titles currently, or how can they find those people that can make decisions with that data?
Yeah. So with all my companies, we try to partner with other people in the space that do stuff that we don't do at a high level with the same values as us. So if you go to EcomBalance partners page, right on our site, we have a whole list of different CPAs, different CFOs. If anyone wants an introduction, shoot me an email, nathan@ecombalance.com. More than happy to send you their way, regardless of whether you use our service or not.
Yeah, that's great. That's helpful. And I imagine, are these people that you have, vetted now because you've been able to work with them and you say, hey, we've seen the way that they're handling these books and they seem to understand things. Obviously, there's a limited amount of vetting because you're not the CFO as well, but you're saying in the vetting process that we've done, or what does that vetting process look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's people that we've sent clients back and forth with. Like the CPA that I refer is my personal CPA that I've used for 15 years. He helped me sell a company. I'm forever in debt, and they have a lot of different services there. They're a large firm, but medium-sized firm. And so anything that I personally used is definitely top of mind, but there's also people in the space that have sent clients to me that have nothing but great things to say about the person that they're coming from. And so that's a good record as well.
Yeah, that makes a difference. Okay, let's say, when is it the right time for e-commerce merchants to decide that it's time for them to be done with doing the books? We hinted at this at the beginning where we talked about day one, sure, to a point. But are there other signs and symptoms that you would say where it's like maybe somebody's been running it for themselves, they didn't do this day one, they've been running it for themselves, and they're starting to notice these things taking place, and you're saying this is a clear telltale sign you need to get somebody in managing your books?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of default to you should have someone manage your books at all times. If you're not doing it now, get someone to do it. We're recording this in June. It's actually a perfect time to do it just because tax season's over and you've got until the October 15th. Let's say you got an extension. And if you want to give your bookkeeper time and not be rushing and not be stressed in October, if you still need to do last year's books, now's the time to find a bookkeeper that understands e-commerce, that has the bandwidth to take you on, that can handle that project. And the last thing you want to be doing is trying to find a bookkeeper like January to April. That's a terrible time right before tax season. You're going to pay the most money. You're going to have delays. You're probably going to have to file an extension anyway. So that summer months is really the go-to. But I mean, if you're not on monthly books where you're getting on-time books every single month and your books are caught up, that should be a big focus to get the right setup, get the right bookkeeper, get a monthly finance meeting on your calendar and get into that good process as soon as possible. And if it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. But in a year, you're going to be really happy that you did that. Yeah.
What are 2 to 3 year goals that you have then for EcomBalance? Where do you want to take this company over the next couple of years?
I always hear oh, you're just going to flip this business or something like that. Or you have a history of selling businesses. I sold one company, so I don't know if that's necessarily true. But my business partner, Connor, my goal is to have a portfolio of businesses that help entrepreneurs. We have Outsource School, which we plan on continuing to run. We have EcomBalance and AccountsBalance, our 2 monthly bookkeeping brands. EcomBalance for e-commerce sellers, AccountsBalance for agencies and other services. And I mean, we think bookkeeping is going to be around for the next 30 years plus and is a pretty solid business in our portfolio that we can build on. And from there, we want to add other companies, whether we're buying them, whether we're starting them, and kind of have this portfolio of businesses. The 2 people that we sold free up to, Mark Hargrove and David Martin, they just load up on companies and just hold them forever. And that's kind of what we do in the stock market, my business partner and I, and kind of what we plan on doing here. So our goal is to consistently grow it. I think a little different than free up. I don't think bookkeeping can handle just massive growth at once. If we added 100 clients tomorrow, that would be very difficult on our team, but I think it can handle constant, steady growth where you're adding
Sure.
5 to 10 clients every single month. And that's what we want to do for the foreseeable future, and eventually build a business that's bigger than FreeUp and have it something that we keep for years to come. And yeah, we just love the space. It's boring, and most of it is run by bookkeepers, which we like. It's kind of hilarious being a non-bookkeeper in all these different
Sure.
communities running a bookkeeping business. But yeah, that's kind of our overall mindset.
I like that you talked about like the buy and hold strategy as well, even within the stock market. This is unofficial advice for anybody listening, but I'm a buy and hold kind of guy as well. And when you look at e-commerce as a percentage of retail sales, it makes up about 15% or so. It's absolutely just, and it's still an infant, right? And so being in the e-commerce space, again, this is talk to your financial planner or whatever, but I would say that there's still a lot of growth left for e-commerce businesses, and things have been beat up a little bit, especially in our space. And so I doubled up on, I shouldn't say doubled up. I don't remember how much more I put in, but I put in more into Amazon and Shopify, being, two of the dominant players in the e-com space, just with the assumption that, if you look at, let's say 15%, well, you give that a few more years. When's that going to get to 20%, 25, 30%? I think there's still a lot of growth for e-commerce as a whole. But again, not official financial advice. Talk to your CPA, your financial planner, whoever you want to on that.
You and I were very much in lockstep there.
Yeah, well, and I would say if we want to go down that tangent for just a moment more, I'm also really big into genetics. Again, not talking about anything. Like I got into CRISPR a little bit. I think about like, where's gene editing going to be in the next 10, 20 years? There's a lot of growth for that being a very emerging field potentially as well.
I like it. One of my just investing philosophies, we're getting off track here, but don't invest in anything that you don't understand. So I kind of stay away from like the health industry, and it's just pretty far away from my core competency.
There's a lot of intelligence in making sure that you stay within the realm of what you understand. I know Warren Buffett talks about that a lot, and so do just about anybody who's successful in that. I sometimes look at some of these other ones as gambles that are just fun and interesting, and things that I let's say enjoy more as hobbies of researching, and say, okay, well, this is an interesting sector that I think is going to do well. What about I want to get into the personal side of who is Nathan Hirsch then as well. What about your childhood? Is there something in your childhood or something that made you the way that you are, the type of person that can see something, say, that's a really unsexy business, I'm going to turn that into a business and grow that and sell it or whatever that might be? What made you this way?
So I think that the unsexy parts of business kind of came as I just became more of like a veteran entrepreneur and like see what worked and what didn't. But I think entrepreneurship, there's a joke in my family that it all comes down to French fries. So I'll explain. My parents were both teachers growing up, grew up middle class, never poor, never wealthy, like always had a roof over my head. But I grew up in a town with my dad I grew up in East Longmeadow. My dad taught in Longmeadow. And so I got to go to the Longmeadow school system, which was better. And all my friends, their parents were doctors, lawyers, dentists, entrepreneurs, like super wealthy town. And I was just like this middle-class person going to this very rich school, public school. And so like growing up, my parents were always very frugal. They taught me how to save. Couldn't have better, loving, supporting parents. But they always made me buy anything that I wanted myself. Like my first car, had to pay for it myself. My any video game I wanted, had to pay for myself. So I got jobs at a very young age. So that kind of taught me work ethic and value of a dollar and all of that. But even like going back younger, whenever we'd go on ski trips, my parents were big skiers. I always wanted to get French fries at the cafeteria in the lodge, and we would always bring a lunch. My parents would never let me get French fries. So I think in my mind, I was like, when I grow up, I want to be able to buy French fries anytime I want. And I think that's what kind of stemmed the like make money for yourself, work for yourself, and all of that. So I think if I ever went to a therapist, which I've never done, and kind of really dug into it, I think like all my ambitions for like being self-sufficient and financially sound and just like having financial freedom and all of that just comes down to wanting to buy my own French fries as a kid.
I love it because it reminds me, one of the sayings that we say sometimes in business is stay hungry, right? And yours literally stemmed from hunger, right? Not just hunger for success or growth, but an actual hunger for French fries. It reminds me of actually one of my first jobs when I was a kid as well, delivering newspapers. I think it was 11 when I got that job, and my mom was really great about helping us get that set up and work on that. But I can remember, getting a paycheck at like 11 and being able to do something with some of that cash. And I had like a neighborhood pizza party where it's like, so I invited some of the neighborhood kids over. And it's like, I wanted to buy my own pizza. Right. And it was like, that was a really cool thing to be able to do. Like you said, to buy your own French fries, buy your own pizza.
Yeah. And I mean, all these jobs that I got, like I had so many different, I've never had a real job after college, but jobs in high school and college, like it all taught me just having a boss sucks. And it kind of gave me a glimpse for what life was like in the real world. And I wanted no part of it. And that motivated me to be an entrepreneur as well.
Maybe this, we didn't talk about this. What was your first job? What was the job that made you realize you're just like, yeah, no, I'm going to be an entrepreneur like this. I can't do this.
So my first job that I actually liked a lot, I was the umpire in my town. They would pay me $25 a game for like a 1 hour or 2 hour game, which was awesome. And then they made me the head umpire of the Little League. So I would get like $300 a season, and I had to manage all the schedules. And I think that's when I learned like people are super unreliable and they wouldn't show up, and I would have to stop what I'm doing and drive to the game and umpire myself. And so that was that. But the biggest one was Firestone. I used to work as a sales intern at Firestone, and I know absolutely nothing about cars. Like cars are not my thing. In my mind, it's a way to get from point A to point B. I don't really get like people's fascination with it. But my job was to sell people car services, and I knew nothing about cars. So you learn a lot about sales and rejection and that at a very young age, which I think is skills that I still apply to this day.
That's good. There's something about having to go through some loss and some failure in early days of you're just like, this isn't good. I need to figure out how to break through this. This is painful. I need to figure out how to change that. That I think helps to drive people in sheltering kids from too many of those scenarios doesn't benefit them. Obviously, there's good pain, there's good struggle, there's bad pain, there's bad struggle. But in many ways, a lot of these micro struggles with a boss that you don't like, or people not showing up that you scheduled, or whatever that might be, are catalysts for significant growth personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many kind of just ups and downs, whether like you're a teenager trying to figure out your life or like an early entrepreneur, and you kind of just learn from the different failures. And as you get older, you start to become numb to it. When things are going well, you celebrate a little bit, but you're like, all right, how do I prepare for other things that could go wrong? And when you fail, you don't think you're going to become homeless and life is over. And you kind of look at it as a lesson that you're going to be better for. So,
yeah. Where else did you learn to be an entrepreneur? Are there books or podcasts that you particularly like or listen to or read that you say, these have helped shape my mentality about what it means to grow and be successful?
It's funny. I like back when we started FreeUp, which I had an Amazon business before that, but I consider FreeUp like my first B2B where I had to learn like marketing and SEO. And the Amazon business, we made a lot of money, but it was mostly timing more than anything else. We just got in super early. But like we never, like I read some business books like 4 Hour Workweek and stuff like that, but I never really listened to podcasts, and I'd never joined any like masterminds or had any coaches. A lot of what I did was just trial and error and taking what I had learned from all these internships about customer service and sales and the keeping a customer long-term and negotiating and like all of that kind of stuff. So for me, part of the fun of being an entrepreneur is figuring it out yourself. And I always try to stay away from like groupthink where it's like everyone's doing this lead generation formula, so like you need to do it too. And more of like, hey, how do I carve out something different that no one else is doing? And like podcasts is a good example. Like now podcasts are blowing up. When I started FreeUp, I started going on podcasts, and it was just a free way to get in front of people. And I mean, going on the hundreds of podcasts during FreeUp, no one else was really doing that. And it was a great way to just get our brand out for free. And it was definitely different than what everyone else was doing. I think at the time, like Facebook ads was like the main thing that everyone was going crazy over. So I always try to kind of be a little different and carve out something unique to me.
I like that. What are you afraid of? Is there anything that keeps you up at night that you say, this is tough? Being an entrepreneur is tough, whatever that might be.
I think I shouldn't say it. I think every entrepreneur, I can't verify this, but kind of has the same fear of just like blowing everything, like blowing all your money, like ruining it for your family, like investing in some business. Like I'm pretty frugal, but it's still just like that irrational fear of like, like never starting another successful company again, and then somehow like driving everything you have into the ground. And I think like I have a kid on the way that's due in August. So you're kind of always just trying to be like, all right, like you can take a risk, but let's be smart about it. And it's just a irrational fear that I think I have, and I think other entrepreneurs have. Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that. Coming back to that, then you mentioned that you haven't seen a psychologist or a counselor or anything along those lines, which I think is actually the exception to the rule for most entrepreneurs. How do you stay grounded during the stress of building, growing, operating, running a business? Is there a routine or a song that you listen to that you're like, this is the song that I have to listen to in the morning to like shake off whatever bad juju is going on? Or like, how do you stay grounded in pushing forward?
There's an inside joke between me and my business partner Connor that he's my therapist. So when he's like the most calm, cool, collective person, I don't think I've ever seen him upset in my entire life. And he'll shrug stuff off, and I'll be like, "Yo, this is blowing up. Like, this is going to be a disaster here. Like, what's going on?" Like, freaking out. And he's always like, "Nate, dude, we're going to figure it out. Like, calm down." And so I think he's kind of one thing that's kind of prevented me from having to go down that route, because whenever, like, you still kind of go through highs and lows, and I'm definitely way different than I was during the free up days where I was hustling all the time, and I had some Amazon money, but like I didn't have enough money to survive the rest of my life. Now sure. you're kind of like we're building business for fun, and if stuff doesn't work, it's a completely different situation than if free up failed back in the day. So, but even now I'm like, oh my God, we like haven't landed a client in 2 weeks. Like, what's going on? And he's like, dude, we're going to figure it out. Trust the process. And I think that really keeps me more stable, so to speak.
Are you familiar with Traction by Gino Wickman, EOS?
Yeah, one of my favorite books. I think it's back there.
Oh, nice. It's a little blurry, so I can't quite see it all the way. But yes, I love that book as well. When you described your partner, that's my business partner as well. I don't know. Are you the visionary then, and he's the integrator?
I think so. I do think.
Yeah.
I love that book. I think that sometimes there's a little black and white that gets blurred. Totally. I think if you're growing like an Apple or an Uber, that's true. But like most of the time, we're not trying to necessarily build the next Uber. Like we're trying to find a very boring industry that we can take our percentage of and run it a different way with a high level of customer service. So with that, we're both like brainstorming ideas and thinking of the future, and we're both executing to some extent. And like, sure, I wanted to build the next Silicon Valley startup. Maybe you do need to really, really separate it, but it does merge together a little bit, at least in our situation.
Yeah, at least from a personality standpoint, I totally resonated with you where, that is me to my business partner, Jeff, where, he definitely shields the rest of our team from a lot of my psychosis of it's like, oh, what's going on with this? Like, this is just like, this is terrible. What just happened with this? Like, what are we going with this? And he's very calm, cool, and collected in very many ways, the opposite of me, even down to the point where it's like, I'm an Apple guy, he's a Windows guy. Like, we have so many things that we're very opposite on, and he helps kind of calm and balance me out. What about famous people? Sometimes people have fun stories about this. Have you ever met anybody famous? Any fun stories about that?
So I think the only actually, I have two famous stories. So I used to work as a caterer, and I'm very like fast paced. So I was really good at working at this catering company. So one day I was a high schooler, and there were people there where it was like their real job, and they put me at a VIP table for this actor Fran from The Nanny. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, like way back in the day,
or whatever. Like that voice, yeah.
Yep. I think she's actually the head of like the Writers Guild or the Actors Guild or something right now. But I got to to wait on her VIP table, so that was kind of cool. And then Mariano Rivera came to our high school. His son went to Quinnipiac University, and at the time they were exploring it. And he came to the athletic center, and everyone had this like huge line, and I ran around back and got to see him like get snuck out back. And I was like, hey, will you sign a ball? He's like, no. I'm like, can I shake your hand? He's like, sure. So I shook Mariano Rivera's hand, and that was that.
But no ball. That's a bummer. That's good though. That's cool to see even shake his hand, right? Coming up towards the end of our time, if you had to give just any piece of advice to an entrepreneur probably in the e-commerce space, but it doesn't have to be, but just people who are listening to this podcast, you'd say, what is the one piece of advice that you would give them when it comes to literally anything, mental health with this, or what tool they should use? What's that one piece of advice you'd want to give?
I'm a big fan of minimum viable product. I try to do that with everything. Like with Amazon back in the day, I tried drop shipping 10 products, and if people left me bad reviews or whatever, something bad happened, I would have just stopped the business model and tried something else. With FreeUp, I gave all these people some free hours of VAs, and if they liked it, I was going to spend more time building it out. If they hated it, just move on. And Outsource School, when we launched it, we didn't know if people would like it or hate it. If they hated it, I would have refunded everyone and moved on to the next thing. And EcomBalance and AccountsBalance is no different. We gave all these people 2 free months of bookkeeping, and if no one stuck around after that, all right, we tried. We didn't invest a lot of money. We move on. And I remember I live in Colorado now, but one of the things I did not love about the Florida entrepreneurship community that I was a part of is it always felt like it was, hey, give me $500,000 and then I'll start working on the idea. And to me, it's just so backwards. It's like, go do market research, go talk to your ideal customer, go get sales. Like if you can sell something, everything else will take care of itself. Money will always follow there, but you got to spend more time testing it. And just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean it is. And there's plenty of bad ideas that we've tested that were like, like I don't like that, but that worked for our customers. So like, let's do that. So big proponent of just low risk, high reward, minimum viable product.
Yeah. MVP, right? I love that as well. Especially back from my SaaS days, MVP was something I think we talked about a lot where sometimes all you have to do is put up a landing page and just see, can you actually even get email addresses of people that are interested in it? Like sometimes that is the literally minimum viable product. It's like, are people interested in this at all? And if they're not, maybe you don't have anything worthwhile.
Right.
What about, this is my final thing. I have a fun little game that I like to play, which is just called What's That Mean? I'm going to give you an English word. It's one that I don't think that you know the definition for. They're just random weird English words. I want you to give a definition of what you would say this means, but make it sound believable to us, where it's like, clearly that's not what it means, but we're going to make it sound believable. Your word is Dragoman. 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 What does that mean?
Someone that loves Dungeons and Dragons. So they're Dragoman.
Obviously. I mean, it's right there in the name, right? Like we don't even need to look that one up to find out if that's true, which it's not.
What does it mean?
But it means an interpreter or professional guide for travelers. Not at all what I would have thought.
Interesting. Actually, when you said the word, I was like, I've heard that before somewhere, but I don't know where.
I've never heard it.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you have.
I feel like it's on John Oliver or something.
Sure. Okay. So Nathan, I really appreciate you coming out here, giving up your time here and your knowledge and wisdom to us. If people wanted to work with you, if they want to follow you, connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, Nathan Hirsch. I post a lot of daily content there about hiring and bookkeeping and boring parts of business. Go to outsourceschool.com. You can check out our hiring process there. And if you mention this podcast and you go to EcomBalance.com, you get 2 months free.
Awesome. Again, thank you very much for coming out here today, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.